Brilliant. So for anyone that's joining us on the recording as well, welcome to this session. We are currently streaming this across to Facebook too, but anyone that is catching up as well, hopefully you'll take some snippets back from this. We've just done a quick poll to see where everyone is up to in their confidence levels on negotiation. That topic that we haven't really been taught a huge amount about, but once you start to dive into it with Paul, we'll realize just how valuable it is in all aspects of our lives as well. So we've got mostly 1s, 2s and 3s out of 10. So if that is you, you are not alone. In a minute, I'm going to hand over to Paul, who is one of my colleagues at VetU, one of the founders, in fact, of VetU. And in the meantime, just before we do that, I wanted to remind you all that if you've got any tech issues, any concerns, any problems, drop them in the chat box. I'll be there to help out with that in the background. If you want to ask questions anonymously, you can direct message them to myself or to Paul. There is no such thing as a stupid question on these sessions. If you're wondering it, then I can guarantee you won't be the only one in the room that is wondering that question. So make sure that you do ask it. Use this time because Paul really does know his stuff on this topic, and we're just really grateful that you've all come along and gifted yourselves this time to learn a little bit more about the skill of negotiation. And finally, we do love a bit of jargon busting, and I'm sure that Paul, being well versed in being on these VetU sessions for many years now, will make sure he explains all abbreviations and terms fully. But if you do hear any jargon that hasn't been explained, get it in the chat box, because then we will donate a £5 to VetLife as well. So Paul will be on his toes to make sure that everything is explained fully as well. So we'd love to know in the chat box what you're hoping to get out of this session, any questions. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Paul.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone's got any, just jump in, fire a question in, even turn your video on and say hi, and we can sort of natter as we go through. But yeah, welcome. Thanks for dropping in. It's a lovely evening for me down here in the south at the moment. So yeah, thanks for taking your time and not going to the pub garden and popping over and having a listen to us. So today we're going to have a little chat through for sort of 40-45 minutes or so on how to ace negotiations, some tips and tricks, and then have a bit of a discussion and open it up for questions at the end. Before we really dive into the meat of the talk, who are we? Why have you dropped in to listen to VetU? Well, we're a group of four vets from very different backgrounds. We are equine vets, small animal vets, farm animal vets. We've diversified a bit. We've got side hustles. We've got various bits and pieces. And so we've sort of jumped in and out of internships and residencies and moved around the country, some of us even around the world at various bits and points. So hopefully we've got quite a few touch points in how a career these days looks as a veterinary surgeon. And really, we've set up VetU because over the years we've sort of realized this is the sort of stuff I wish we'd been told when we started out, and I wish we'd had the signposting to help the sort of the three pillars that VetU's all about. It's to sort of make sure that you can look after your health. Obviously, if you're not healthy, if you're not able to go to work, it's going to cause problems. A lot of surveys have come out. There was that 2019 survey from the BVA talking about how many vets in practice are getting injured each year, and 30, 40, 50% of us are getting injured and having to take time off work. So how can we help you get back to work quicker with private health insurance or cash plans, etc. Looking after your income. Income protection for me, and is probably one of the drivers for why we set up VetU in the first place, is that unfortunately in every single year at vet school, there's always one or two people who have a very difficult time because of health or injury, and are unable to work for periods of time. And by making sure that you've looked after yourself and you've got a policy like an income protection policy in place, means that hopefully, yes, you're having a hard time, but at least you're not running out of money. At least there's a safety blanket there to help you. And then finally, very boring as a new graduate, but it gets more and more important as you get older, but then you kick yourself and you wish you'd started as a new graduate. It's just to think about your future. When do you want to retire? How wealthy do you want to be in retirement? Can you set yourself up for success later on around pensions and stuff? So those are the three tiers and the reasons around VetU. It's all about trying to make you have a more enjoyable, independent time as a veterinary surgeon, so that you can perhaps not worry about the finances and go on and do whatever it is that you want to do in your life. So what we do, we look at education, support, signposting, sharing across the community, what works well, what doesn't go well, hints and tips and tricks around everything to do with finance, all that boring stuff that we wish we'd been told, but no one ever does as you're sort of growing up, around income protection, pensions, how do you get a mortgage, how can I get a mortgage as a locum, how much should I be saving if I want to set up as a locum and just do a side hustle, what about IR35, what about tax, what about budgeting, all of those sort of silly questions that you sort of kick yourself and you go, I should know that, but you don't, because you haven't gone to accountancy school, you haven't become a finance expert, you've become a vet or a vet nurse, and so this is the idea, to be that educational hub. So really, it's all about us hoping, signposting, blogs, webinars, etc., so that you can ask the questions and we can pass you on, signpost you to people who get our profession and get who we are, and can talk to you in a way that that makes sense, rather than just using, as Katie said earlier, lots of jargon and three-letter abbreviations and stuff like this that then confuses us, and perhaps probably puts us off. A final little sort of signpost towards what's coming up over the next 6 or 7 months. We do have a Linktree events calendar if you want to look on it. All of our events coming up are free to attend. They are recorded. If you register, we will send you a link a few days later for you to then listen back and watch back. Even if you've come and listened, sometimes it's nice to look back through, because there might have been 1 or 2 things or 1 or 2 points that our experts have shared. And again, open to everyone, vets, nurses, students, anyone attached to our veterinary community. And the next one's coming up there on the other side of the screens. I think the next one is in May, which is our looking at pensions. And so really, final slide here in terms of VetU, what do? We have created or got a range of different professionals, financial advisors, pensions experts, accountants, tax advisors, and by working with them, almost like a trust pilot, we've built up people who we know get us. So many hundreds of you have gone through these advisors and have fed back. They get it, they get us, they understand us. So hopefully when we are recommending them, we're recommending them with many hundreds of recommendations from your colleagues to say that they kind of understand what a locum is and what we do and why we can't get on the phone at 7 o'clock in the evening, we're still in consults, etc.
And Paul, we've just had someone pop in the chat just here saying that they jumped on with Ruth, who is one of the fantastic financial advisors that we work with a lot, and said, just wanted to let you know, I had a chat with Ruth and she was amazing. She was very helpful and reassuring. So super feedback. And I'll pop Ruth's link in there as well if anyone wants to have a chat with Ruth. Thank you for sharing that. I thought I'd jump in at that point.
Excellent. I agree. She is awesome. She is just so keen and so on your side and so invested in making sure that she understands what you want, rather than just perhaps a computer says yes, computer says no. If you're applying for cheaper products online, she really does get involved. No, she's a good lass. Cool. Right, so getting on to why we're here, having a chat about negotiation. I get it. Negotiation is one of those things that people get nervous about, having to, knock on the boss's door and go, can we have a time to have a chat? I'd like to talk about my salary. I'd like to talk about my package, or even just, if you're going in as a new graduate and you're doing interviews, how can you push back? Okay, that's the salary, but am I happy with that? Or am I happy with the number of days I'm working, etc. So I get it that negotiation is something that we're not taught. Weirdly, it is a skill, and actually a lot of if in the legal profession or in the police, places like this, they teach it as a skill, whereas for us, we just sort of perhaps bury our head in the sand and hope that as a professional, and certainly this is how I used to feel, as a professional, I've learned to be a professional, I've joined the profession, I now just expect and I don't really understand why, but I just expect to receive an honest pay for an honest day's work. Why do I have to now go in and push the door open and get my elbows out and start asking for more? Surely as a professional, I should just receive that. And it is a bit uncomfortable. I do understand that it is uncomfortable talking about money. Vets, we don't like talking about money. Professionals don't like talking about money. Any of you who are British, we don't like talking about money. So there's lots and lots of reasons there why we don't like talking about money. But actually, if you think about it, you've got a lot of crossover skills already. You know, certainly if you're a parent, you negotiate all day, every day. You know, it's right, one more Peppa Pig and then up to bed. Can we have 2 Peppa Pigs? 1 Peppa Pig, a chocolate biscuit, and then up to bed. Can we have 2 stories? 1 story, 1 Peppa Pig. And so you can see how negotiating back and forwards, and perhaps I love that Katie thought that I was good at negotiating. You should see me trying to get the kids upstairs for bed. And not so good. They do walk over me. But there was a lot of negotiation that happens anyway with your colleagues at work, negotiating and swapping rotas and duties and talking about that sort of stuff. So don't think of negotiation as just putting the gloves on, walking in for a new job interview, or that once a year chat with your boss about your pay rise. That is negotiating, but also every day you are negotiating. You are chatting back and forwards, trying to make a win-win situation. I'll do your Sunday, but you need to do 2 of my Fridays, etc., etc. There's those crossover skills are already there. So don't think it's just a one-off event. A few bits and trips and a few tips and tricks, and we'll dive into these with a little bit more detail as we go along. Stay calm. The one that really helped me was, this is business. This is not weird. This is not something that's different or odd or something that you shouldn't be doing. Oh, this is a bit weird. Why are you asking to negotiate? No, this is business. Okay, anyone involved in business completely expects it. Negotiation and negotiation skills are an absolute part of being in business, buying, selling, talking with clients, having customers, having suppliers, everything. It is negotiating. So don't feel that you're doing something weird or odd or strange. This is absolutely being business. And therefore, we don't need to get emotional about it. We just need to be very factual and logical and calm, because we are just having a business conversation. I mean, money, unfortunately, does have a lot of emotional connotations to it. But if we can try and park those, we have a better chance of getting what we want. We're going to massively go into research. This is the one point that I want you all to go away with today, is do research. If that's the only thing you take from this, then that is going to put you in huge stead. Do lots and lots and lots of research. Whenever, in terms of the theory around negotiating, for those people who do it professionally, they will say you do 2 times the length of time doing your research as you do in the negotiation. So if it's a couple of days negotiating buying a company, it's a week doing your research before you walk in there. So for most of us, it's 1 or 2 hours having the negotiation with our boss. We need to be doing 3 or 4 hours worth of research before we walk in there. Make sure we know your worth. We'll kind of have a whole 5-10 minutes on knowing your worth, because that can calm a lot of those nerves and a lot of those worries that we are being greedy, or we're overstepping the bounds, or we're being a bit pushy. If we know our worth, we can hopefully squash those little demons, squash that little gremlin sitting on the shoulder going, you're not worth that, etc., which we need to do to be able to negotiate well. Realize that this is a win-win situation that we are going for. Some negotiations are not. You know, if you're buying a used car, or if someone knocks on your door and tries to do double glazing salesman, that is a one-off event. And when it finishes, you're never going to see that person again, probably. But for you, you're going to have to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years working with the other party in your negotiation. So if it absolutely has to be a win-win. If either party walks away thinking they've been ripped off, it's going to fester. So it's very important that we are not trying to, squeeze the living daylights out of every single penny here to get this, that, and the other. Both of you need to walk away happy with where you've both got to. And then the big one that I didn't realize until I did a talk with a couple of years ago, and the person I was doing it with brought up this bit of research, and I went away and read it, and it was quite interesting. Lifetime earnings. If you do or don't negotiate for your first or second job, let's say the difference between negotiating and not negotiating was £2,000 starting salary. Okay, you think, oh, well, it's £2,000. It's not the end of the world. But actually, every pay rise you get for the rest of your life is based on what your pay currently is, and often it's a percentage of. And then when you move jobs, your new salary will probably be based on what your current salary is. You say I'm on 45 and therefore I need to be on 50 before I'm going to move, etc., that sort of thing. So every single job from then on is going to be based on that initial starting salary. And the research paper said that if you negotiated for an extra £2,000 for your first job, that was £500,000 over your lifetime. That's a house. So negotiating hard, or not hard, that's wrong. Negotiating well for that first job over a couple of £1,000s could, in theory, make a house. And I was just like, wow, that's quite impressive. Okay, maybe it is a bit more important than just a couple of grand here and there. And final point before we sort of dive into the detail is the commercial image. And I've been an intern, a resident, I've been an employee, I've been an employer, I've been in independent practice, I've been in corporate practice. So I've sat on both sides of the table quite often, interviewing and being interviewed. One of the biggest perhaps pushbacks or concerns or worries about employing more junior vets is that they're not commercial. They don't charge well enough. They don't value themselves. They don't value their time. And so they're always trying to knock a bit off the bill or keep the bill down. They don't value their 5 years, 6 years of training and their 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of education and experience. They feel nervous about saying, oh, good news, it's £5,000 for this operation. They're like, I'm really sorry. Unfortunately, the best I can do is £5,000 and all this sort of stuff. So, and that's often the criticism of less experienced vets. If you are able to come in and negotiate well with your new employer or your boss, then that puts you in good stead. It means that you're comfortable talking about money. If you're not comfortable talking to me as your new boss or your current boss, if you are nervous talking to me about your salary, your package, then I'm pretty sure you're going to be very rubbish talking to clients. Okay, so it just puts you in good stead. So don't feel nervous about talking about money, because if you're nervous talking to your boss about money, you're probably very nervous talking to clients. Employers, if they think about it, want their employees to be comfortable negotiating and chatting and talking this sort of stuff through. So it is good for your image to go in there and be comfortable to negotiate. Obviously, you're not trying to arm wrestle and utterly win over everything, but to be able to be confident and talk back and forwards about this without getting emotional, without getting angry or upset, etc., is a skill which is valued by the profession. So let's dive into a few more of those points. Okay, I can't stress enough, this is probably the most important thing, and it's the least done by most people who do negotiation, especially salary negotiation. They go in there and go, right, I've got my boss for an hour, I'm going to go in there and ask him for some more money. And that's it. You need to do hours of research on this, okay? You can't do too much research. Know your worth. How much are you going to ask for? What is sensible? What is out there? What is your current value in the job market? How do I know that? Well, there's lots of different ways you can go about it. You can look at job adverts. I'm really pleased to see that more and more job adverts are starting to put the salary range in the job advert. And I think that's super important for many, many reasons. So that's a nice way to look and see what the range is for the level of experience and the location and the species and the et cetera, et cetera. I get very annoyed by people who don't put the job advert, the salary in the job advert. Why? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to disguise it? Are you embarrassed about it? If your salary is that competitive, why are you not telling me how competitive it is, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it seems to be that is changing. There was a bit of research that came out for anyone who's an employer and is looking for jobs, looking for people to apply for your job. There was a bit of research that came out of Indeed. And I know Indeed is not really a veterinary specific advertising site, but if you put the salary range in your job advert, you had 3 times as many applicants as not putting the salary range in your job advert. So it's out there as a thing that I feel we should be doing. Others in your team, if you're already in the job and you're going in to have a salary review, ask other people for what they're on. Ask your friends in the practice what they're on. I know some employers try and say you shouldn't be allowed to. It's not actually legal. You can't stop people talking about their salaries, and nor should you, in my opinion. The only person who wins by making it opaque is probably the employer. And where practices and where companies disguise and hide their salary bands and their pay packets, there's always the risk or the perception of discrimination. A lot of the worries and concerns and stuff we need to push back on in terms of gender discrimination and the pay scales that came out recently, that we all probably read about in the press. If everyone knows what everyone else is getting, a lot of that goes away, doesn't it? Because you can't hide it. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone's from Scandinavia here. My understanding is that in Scandinavia, certainly in Norway, you can go online to the tax office and see what everyone else is getting paid. You can just type in, I can type in Katie Ford's name and see how much gold she has stashed underneath her mattress, and see what she's getting paid. And that means that everyone can see what everyone else is on. I digress. A SPIV salary survey, that's one that comes out every year. Again, very useful, very detailed, lots of benchmarking in terms of areas and locations and species. You can talk to your friends, you can talk to your alumni. Find out what you're worth. And if you're already in practice, try and get hold of your accounts. How much do you turn over? What do you bring in for the practice? Because that's very powerful, and I'll show you why in a second. But can you get hold of, and I appreciate that some can, some can't, can you get hold of the turnover, the income that you generate for that practice? And the reason that I'd say I want you to feel that you are worth more than you probably feel you're worth is because, and I've done this in 3 separate times over my career, and we've sat down and worked out what the cost of losing a vet, what the cost of one turnover costs. And every single time it's been pretty much £15,000 to lose a vet. Okay, so that's, if you're going in asking for a few quid, just remember that losing you and replacing you with someone else is going to cost the employer, the person on the other side of the table, about £15,000. That comes from many places. That comes from the fact that when you hand your notice in, you probably don't work that hard. And your productivity drops. That comes from the fact that odds on there's going to be a gap from you leaving and us employing another person. So there's going to be maybe a gap, and I'm going to have to pay someone more or get a locum in, or worst case scenario, someone else leaves because I'm now making them do more out of hours, and they properly get fed up with that, and understandable. Then I've got to spend money on Vet Record or somewhere to put my advert. Actually, that's quite small, the actual amount that you pay for advertising it. Then I've got to write the advert, I've got management time, I've got to interview, I've got to find the right person, I've got to bring them in. I've then got to train them up. They're never going to be as good for a few months until they get up to speed. Even if they're a brilliant, fantastic employee, eventually they are going to take time to be brought up to speed, to be as efficient, to bring into the team, to make that team normalize. £15,000 every time you lose someone and have to turn over. So just have that in the back of your mind to feel you're worth quite a lot more than perhaps you think you're worth. And just psychologically, hopefully that helps you when you go into that negotiation. So you know what you're worth. You know what the market thinks someone of your skill set is worth. Next, what do you want? Where are you happy to negotiate? Now, it's not all about salary. It's about the package, it's about the overall thing, but obviously salary is a very important part of that. But this is what I'd like you all to do before you go into your negotiation, is to think about every single thing that you want or do not want in a job. And I've just scribbled down some there, salary, the location, the species, how much holiday, how much daytime you do, how much out of hours you do, how much support you want, CPD, bonus, practice, funded certificates. The list is probably endless because it's very specific to you. What do you want? Stick them down in an Excel spreadsheet, and then 3 columns after that. Must have, would like to have, and red lines, will not accept, and then fill it in. So it might be, in terms of salary there, I've said, well, actually, I would really like 45,000. That's what I'm going for. But I will not take this job if it's less than 43,000. Okay, well, now we've got a gap. Now we've actually can walk in there and we know what we're pitching for, and what we won't accept. Well, that's good. So before, if we hadn't done our research, we would have been perhaps sitting there like if they'd gone, Katie, what's your salary expectations? You'd be like, a bit goldfish, a bit not sure. But now you can go 45,000. They're straight in. You've done your research. You're confident. You know what you want. Next might be out of hours rota. I'm happy to do a 1 in 6, but I will not do less than a 1 in 4. Holiday. I must have more than 25 days. I'd like to have more than 30 days holiday. CPD, again, £15,000. I must have more than 15 grand, £1,500 a year in my CPD fund. I would like to have 2,000 in my CPD fund. Now we've got 5 or 6 things that we can negotiate on. So it might be that you are trying to go for 45,000, but you're not going to accept less than 43. Okay, you might accept 43,000 for a better out of hours rota, or you might accept a worse out of hours rota if it then went to 4 days a week. You can see now how you've done your research. You're not, the whole idea of this is that you don't get blindsided. You don't sit there like a goldfish going, oh, I hadn't thought of that. If you've thought it all through, you know where you're prepared to sort of wiggle up or wiggle down. So and you've got your must-haves or your red lines and your like-to-haves in the middle, and you can perhaps accept a little bit more salary for a bit worse rota, or a bit more CPD for a bit less holiday. You've now got something that you can haggle over, that you can negotiate over, without being blindsided because you've got those red lines that you will not accept, worse than. Someone actually said some people find this quite useful, is just psychologically, is you can print that out, fold it up and put it in your back pocket. Never get it out. Don't get it out in the negotiation. That would be a bit, probably a bit strange. But just by having it in your back pocket, it's just sort of there psychologically, burning a hole in there, keeping you honest, not letting you get ripped off, etc. So if that is useful to you, by all means, just physically print it off, stick it in your back pocket, and it sits there while you're in the negotiation, just making you know what to do. And then the final bit of the research is to put yourself in their shoes. Understand what they want, what's important to them. What we're trying to do here is, wouldn't it be awesome if all the things that are super important to you are actually not that important to them, and they're like, yeah, have all those, that's fine. And all the things that are super important to them on the other side are like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, of course, I can work at that branch surgery every Wednesday morning. They're like, oh my God, that's saved me. And you're like, well, it's a piece of cake for me. But you having finishing at 5 o'clock on a Friday is an absolute must. And they're like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So that's what we're trying to do. Put yourself in their shoes, try and understand it from their point of view. If you go into the negotiation all about I must have, I want, blah, 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 potentially you're not going to get it. If you can work out, what can I do? How can I sell it to them? How can I put it? What are they worried about? What are they concerned about? Some of the things to think about might be, and I know we've had a few questions in already on this, but it's very different. If I'm going for a job, or I'm working in a small independent practice with 2 or 3 members of staff, and I'm sitting down with the boss, perhaps the only boss in the practice, it's very easy for that person to increase my salary by a couple of £1,000 if that's what I'm pitching for, and they want to keep me. That's pretty simple to do that. Alternatively, if you're negotiating in a very large corporate, and you're trying to go for a couple of £1,000, in the back of their mind, it's not just you. If I give you £1,000, then it's the other 5 people in the practice I need to give £1,000 to. Only fair, because it would be unfair if one person was getting paid more for doing the same job. And that's perhaps where we would run into those gender discrimination problems that are out there. Or they might even be thinking really big picture. They might have a couple of 100 new grads joining next year. And if they give you £2,000, that's actually hundreds of thousands of pounds that they're giving away. So you can see how it can make a big difference. So if that is the case, try and give them reasons to why they should give you more. Why are you different? Why are you better? What is it that you do that they could use to explain why you've got a little bit more and Bob or Kate or Steph or whoever doesn't get it. And it might be that you've got a qualification, point that out. It might be that you're able to do more difficult cases, or you've got additional responsibilities. You're more happy doing sole charge at the branch surgery, or you do more antisocial hours, or you're more profitable. Another one, you know, you've got hold of the accounts and actually you are the top performer and you bring in more money. So try and give them a reason to say yes to you. Try and think about, if you were on the other side, if you were sitting on the other side of the desk and you walked in and asked for £2,000 more, what would make you say yes or no? If you were sitting on the other side, what is it that you want to hear, that you need to hear? Because most people, remember, it's £15,000. If you throw your teddies out of the pram and stomp off and leave, £15,000 I'm going to lose. So I want to keep you because you're a good employee. Tell me how I can do that. Okay. And this is what we're trying to do, because both of you want to win here. So, you know, trying to explain or point out that you do additional work, that you do additional things, that you have an additional qualification, that you are more profitable, will really help them to help you on that side of it. So pulling it all together for the research bit, we haven't even got in, remember, we haven't even got into the door yet. We haven't met the person we're going to negotiate with yet. So, and this is why research is the most important part of the whole negotiation process. So you need to make sure that you know this before you walk in the door. Do you know what you want? And do you know what you are prepared to compromise on? Do you know what you will not accept and will not compromise on? Are you happy with what your market value is? If they say, what are your salary expectations? What's your answer? And have you had a good guess at what the other side is looking for? If you can do all of those and say, yeah, I've got all of those in my head, then you are ready to go. You're happy to go, right, let's go in, walk in. I'm feeling confident. I've given myself the best shot of getting what I'd like. So now we're going to walk in there and do the interview. Now, this is business. This is a business conversation. It needs to be non-emotional. Lots of things about it's not fair, I don't understand, this really annoys me, I hate it when this happens. Those are not for a negotiation about strategy. They are for other parts and other discussions. This is business. This is a business skill. Keep it emotional. It is not about being fair. It's about negotiation. And unfortunately, we as professionals don't like that. I get it. We kind of feel that as a professional, I shouldn't need to negotiate. I should just be paid almost like the NHS. I should just be paid a fair salary for a fair day's work. And I shouldn't have to go in here and do this. But we do, because we don't work for the NHS. We work for thousands and thousands of small to medium enterprises. Really interesting one, which I'll explain the background to it, and we can discuss perhaps later in the Q&A, is who should discuss salary first. For many years, the theory around it was whoever mentioned money first lost. And the idea and the reason behind that was that because we're perhaps British and a bit reserved, we are embarrassed, whichever side we are, about talking about that money. So if I was the employee and Katie said to me, Paul, what's your salary expectation? I would probably I'd be embarrassed and I'd err on the low side. Okay, so I would come in and I would, because I spoke about money first, I'd err on the low side. Alternatively, if I'm the employee and Katie's the employer, I'd be like, Katie, what are you paying for this job? And Katie, because she's embarrassed, would err on the high side. And so whoever talks about money first would lose, was the thoughts behind it. It's kind of gone away now, because if you're prepared, if you've done the research, if you've done what we've just talked about for the last half an hour, you shouldn't be embarrassed. You should be confident. You should know your worth. And so now the theory is actually it's better to get in there first. It's called pegging. It's getting in there and getting the first number on the table. So if you're the person, again, if you're the employee, Katie goes, Paul, what's your salary expectations? And I know it's between 43 and 45 because I've done my research. I can go 45. I can feel comfortable that it's not a number I've plucked out of midair. Now we've started the negotiation at 45, and me and Katie are going to negotiate around 45,000. Alternatively, if I'm the employee, I'm the employer, and you come in and I get in first, I could be like, Katie, I'm thinking that this job is probably a £43,000 job. And now What are we doing? We're now negotiating around £43,000. So whoever gets in first probably starts the negotiation off. So try and get in there first. Be comfortable. If you've done your research, be comfortable with saying 43, 44, 45, whatever it is that you feel that number is from your research, and be comfortable with it. Don't be embarrassed. And then finally on it, finish on a massive positive. And this is just psychology coming in here. So everyone goes on about first impressions, but actually last impressions are the bit that makes the most memorable part. So when that maybe it's a CD you're talking to in a corporate environment, when that CD goes and talks to the regional director or the other CDs, the most bit that they will remember is the last minute or so of the interview. Again, if that person is off to because you've asked for a little bit more than they were thinking and they needed to, have a think about it, they will remember most, not the first impressions, but the last impressions. So finish on a massive positive. It's going to give you a much better chance of getting what you want. I really love to work here, or I've really enjoyed working here. It's a fantastic place. Great. I really hope that we come to an agreement here. I'm really looking forward to spending the next 5 or 6 years building this business up. Something along those lines. Have something very, very positive to end that interview on, and you will just have the other person leaving feeling a lot more comfortable, a lot more happier, much more likely to say yes to whatever it is that you've pitched, rather than having an amazing first impression and then a bit of a wishy-washy end. Oh, great, see you on Saturday. So try and have a really massive, positive, fantastic, everything's great. I'm really enjoying working here. I really hope to continue working here. If we can just iron out these few little things, it's going to be great, whatever that is. So, and in the end, and don't accept anything. Don't accept anything. Don't make any decisions in the interview, because unless you are really experienced and really comfortable, which most of us are not, unfortunately, pressure selling works. Pressure selling for timeshares, for double glazing, for anything. If I want to make you buy something, I put the pressure on. I go, oh, well, it's going to be withdrawn, that I've only got 20 of these and you might miss out. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Once it's gone, etc., etc. I can make you buy this thing by putting pressure on. So the best way to avoid that is to go, that's brilliant. I'm really fantastic. It sounds amazing. Give me till this afternoon, or I'll phone you tomorrow and let you know if it's a job offer, or if it's a big change to your work in terms of a salary increase and a promotion, but more hours. And you're just like, I'd just like to have an hour or an afternoon or an evening or something like that. But try, unless you're very confident, just be super positive and say, I will get back to you this afternoon. I will get back to you tomorrow. I will get back to you on Monday, whatever it is, and just go away and leave without accepting anything. After the interview, job done, happy days. Go and have a little bit of reflection time. Just go, even if that's 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, whatever you can do, go and have a coffee, sit down and have a think. Are you happy? You've done your research, so it's not like this is brand new. You've done a lot of research, you've thought it through, you've got your must-haves, you've got red lines, and so you've obviously done a bit of horse trading in the middle, you've given a bit, you've got a bit, you've perhaps got a bit less salary, but a bit more work-life balance, whatever it is that you've negotiated and got. Brilliant. Are you happy? There is nothing wrong, because you've not accepted it, remember, because you've not accepted it in the interview. There's nothing wrong with going back and going, could you just clarify? You said car allowance. Can we just clarify how much that car allowance? I just can't remember. Can you just clarify? Nothing wrong with that. Quickly. We're not talking weeks later. That's obviously a bit rude, but straight away go back. And and there's nothing wrong with going back and saying, look, it's really good, really, really good. Love the offer. Thank you so much. Really enjoy working here. But I think we're still about £1,000 out. We're still about £500 out, and there's nothing wrong with going back in there and trying to just see if you can get to exactly where it is that will make you happy. So because you've not agreed it, because you've not accepted in the negotiation, you've still got that chance over the afternoon or the next day to go back and just go, I think we need a little bit more, whatever it is that you want. So coming to an end now, and we'll open it up for questions and have a chat. Just some little tips and tricks to think about that might help you during it. Okay, a lot of a lot of negotiation is psychology in it. So I'm a big fan of changing no because to yes if. Rather than saying no to someone, try and say yes. It's very hard to disagree with someone who keeps saying yes. It's very hard to get upset with someone who keeps saying yes. But no because is exactly the same as yes if. I'd like to offer you £45,000. No, because that's not enough. I'd like to offer you £45,000. Yes, if I can have a 4-day week, that's brilliant. I've said exactly the same thing pretty much, but I've said yes. So try and say yes to stuff if you can, instead of no. Exactly the same thing. It's what the police negotiators are pretty much banned from ever saying no to anyone that they're negotiating with. And so they always sort of twist it round to something else. Make the first offer, as we've discussed, pegging, get in there first. You've done your research. You know what you're worth. You're confident. You are confident talking about money. Look at me. I'm confident talking about money with you. I'm also confident talking about money with my clients, talking about estimates and quotes. I am someone you want in your business. I will make you money. You need to pay me money. I go in there and say, I think my salary expectations are £47,000. And I know that that's not ridiculous because I've done my research. Do not say, I think my salary should be 45 to 47,000. Because guess what I hear? If you say I'd like my salary to be 45 to 47,000, I hear 45. Okay, so don't use ranges, use concrete numbers. I'm looking for £47,000. Job done, not a range. Silence is your friend sometimes. Just chuck it out there. Some people just don't know when to be quiet. They'll talk themselves out of a deal. You know, oh, well, I would like £45,000. But I appreciate that that's quite a lot of money, and let's negotiate on it, and maybe we should think about this and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm starting to talk myself out of that £45,000. You know, be in there, be confident. You've done your research. You've said what you need to say. I'm now going to be quiet. I'm going to listen. And that comes on to the next point. Listen, what are they trying to tell you? Because if we can get logical and not emotional, we can sit there and try and hear what they're saying. And almost always, they are trying to come up with something that means that you stay and are a motivated, profitable employee for their business. Remember, £15,000, if you leave, it's going to cost me a lot of money. I want you to stay. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Try and give them the answers that they want. If you go in there and ask for a big pay rise, they will be worrying about not just giving you the pay rise, but affording a pay rise for everyone else, because rightly so, if you get a big pay rise, why shouldn't the other people who are your same level of experience, or maybe even more experience, why should you be paid more? They're now worrying about that. So try and tell them, try and help them out, try and give them the reasons why you should be paid more. And finally, you both need to win. Okay, this is not about squeezing an extra few quid here and there. You have to work every day with that person on the other side of the table for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Okay, if you walk away feeling done over, feeling ripped off, or if they walk away feeling ripped off, that's going to fester and that's going to affect your working relationship going onwards. And odds on, you're not going to stay there as long, because it's just not going to be as an enjoyable place to work. So it needs to be a win-win. Both of you need to be happy with the outcome that you end up on. Katie, how are we doing?
I am just keeping my eye on Facebook at the moment, see if we've got any questions coming there. I've had a couple of anonymous questions come through as well, Paul, but should we start with the ones that have been pre-submitted, and I will collate all the ones that have come through on the direct message as well.
Cool, excellent. So a few questions have already been fired in, and so I thought I'd just address those because it probably touches on a lot of the more common questions around this. So someone asked about returning from maternity leave, and having been through it myself recently. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and both me and my wife are vets, and we work. And so I suspect nothing hugely different in terms of returning from maternity, but when you sit down with that must have, must not have red lines, there's going to be an awful lot in there that you need to work on to work out the flexibility, i.e. you will need to finish at this time because this needs to happen. There will just be a lot of research that you need to do before going into that interview, that negotiation. Don't go in there and expect the employer to fix it. Okay, you need to go in there with your proposal of what you need, not I need you to, you need to be very clear. So make sure you do that research, make sure you know that you need to finish on Mondays and Fridays at this time, and you need a late start on a Wednesday. Make sure you've got all the information, because almost certainly they want, you know, an experienced vet coming back to work is fantastic. You are a very valuable commodity coming back in with experience and skills and knowledge, etc., etc. They will want to say yes. Help them by giving them what it is that you need. They may have to go away and look at it and work it through, because you'll probably be going maybe from a full-time job before maternity to a flexible something, you know, and it may well be very different to how other people in the practice are. That's absolutely fine. It's the way that the world is nowadays. Having a big flexibility and having lots of different people with very slightly different contracts is probably the way it needs to go, should go, is going. And so just make sure you do your research and be very clear on what it is you want before you go in there. They're not, the other side of the table is not a mind reader. You need to tell them what it is that you want. Second year graduate schemes are tricky because you're going to work for a corporate, and you're going to work for a corporate in a situation where you are one of hundreds of new graduates. And so the amount of negotiation over salary is very limited. You know, it's very hard for you to go in and go, I'm coming into this graduate scheme, the salary is 30,000. It's very hard for you to go, well, I want 31 or 32, because if they pay you that, what about the other 200 people on the scheme? Why is it for you? So there are some things that you can negotiate on that salary isn't on when you're on the grad scheme. So golden handshakes are progressively becoming a thing. You can ask for a chunk of money to come and join. You can ask for a chunk of money. A retention bonus might be something you might want to talk about. A bonus for completing two-year grad scheme, thank you very much, at the end of it, because that's a bonus. That's the benefit to the practice, is that it's not, if I give you £1,000 increase in salary, then that's that I have to pay you that £1,000 every year until you leave or retire. If I give you a one-off bonus, that's just a one-off bonus, and so it's a lot more affordable for me. Again, as well, if I increase your salary by £1,000, everyone else on that pay level might also rightly assume that they should get that £1,000 pay rise. If I give you a one-off bonus for a reason, it's not necessarily going to cost as much, etc. So that's something you might want to talk about. Other areas that you can talk about are increased CPD allowance, maybe increased holiday. So that's not more pay, that's just doing less work. And so it might be another way that you could negotiate on. That might be of use. Or the final one on that is, when you come off the grad scheme, they might go, well, we'll review your salary in 12 months. If you go, okay, I get that, but could I have in writing a salary review in 6 months? Then that's quite useful, because then you're only at that level for 6 months rather than 12 months, and you then get the chance earlier to negotiate for a higher pay rise. So that might be something you might want to look at. How do I know my rate? Well, as we discussed earlier, there's lots of different reasons. Talk to other people in your practice, talk to your friends, look at job adverts, SPIV salary boards, alumni are quite good to reach out to. Yeah, just chat with lots and lots of people. Anyone who says you can't talk about salary at work is wrong on that.
And Paul, we've had a question along similar lines that's come in anonymously, just on rates and packages and comparisons and things, and they've said, in a salary negotiation, can I compare what someone else in my practice is getting in terms of their package being worth a lot more? Because, for example, I don't get a house provided because I'm part-time, but my housing allowance is not nearly enough to pay for rent in a house, even taking into account the pro rata element. Is it a good or a bad idea to point that out to my employer?
So, yeah, in terms of your research, come in there with the research to show. And again, it's important in the language that you use. So it's impossible to afford a house. It's just a disaster. I can't afford a house. It's not possible. The rents are astronomical around here. is not very useful. Coming in and going, the rents are 470 to 570 pounds, blah, blah, blah. And here is the, if I can come in with the evidence to show that what I am receiving is not as much as they think it is. It may well have been years since they last looked at it, and it was fair 10 years, 15 years ago, but with rents and house prices, changing very rapidly, it may well not be fair. So come in there with the evidence. Don't come in there emotional. It's not fair, it's awful, it's ridiculous, huge rents, etc. Come in with real numbers, factual, logical reasons why you should have X amount more money. And because they want to say yes, almost certainly the other side of the table wants to say yes. You've just got to give them a reason why they should say yes. So think about it in that way, if that helps.
Super, great answer, Paul. We've got a couple more questions that are coming in anonymously through here, which I think tie in a little bit, because there's question number 5 that you've got on here, Paul, which is tips for asking for a salary increase in a job. I've got someone else that's just come in anonymously and said, how do you approach this initially when there's no predetermined time to discuss this, i.e. already in a PAYE job, but no annual reviews or set salary changes, so it's all on us to make it happen? So I feel like we can probably amalgamate those two together.
There's nothing out there. There's nothing legal. There's no reasons. There's no understanding. I mean, we sit down once a year. Why is that? There's no reason at all. It should be once a year. So come up with it. If you feel that if you feel from your research that your market worth, that you are worth more to the practice than they're paying you, then go and ask for a pay review. If that's 1 month in, or 6 months in, or 18 months in, I don't think time should be an issue. Just go and say, look, I've been here 6 months. I've got some things I want to talk about. I'd like to discuss my salary. When can you fit me in? And don't take no for an answer. And you don't have to wait. They try to say, oh, it's only once a year or something like that. It's like, well, okay, I'd like to have a salary review now, please. Within the next week, well, maybe that might be a bit pushy. Within the next month, I think we need to have a sit down about it. And I promise you, in this current climate, guess where the power is? The power is with the employee. We have a ridiculously, the biggest strategic risk for every vet business, be it an enormous corporate or a small little independent, is recruitment and retention, not having enough quality and quantity of staff to keep the lights on. Okay, so at all levels, the power is with the employee at the moment, is with the veterinary surgeon. And so if you go in there and knock on the door and say, I want to talk about my salary, they're an idiot if they don't, because again, it's going to cost them £15,000 if you throw your teddies out of the pram and stomp off next door to the neighbouring practice, okay, and which they could have prevented by giving you £500 or half a day off or something like that. So there is no reason why you can't send them an email if you're a bit worried. If you're a bit, if you are worried about that relationship, if they are, if your boss is more aggressive is the wrong word, but more dominant and more like, oh, it's disgraceful, I can't believe it, send them an email. And that gives you, a couple of hours to write it and get it right and fiddle with it and edit it and then fire it in and follow it up. Don't take no for an answer, because no's a ridiculous answer. Why would they not?
And I think there's such powerful insights, Paul. And I think, again, this is probably something that we say a lot at VetU as well, because we are talking about finances here. And I appreciate it probably feels quite scary sometimes to reach out and say, hey, can we discuss this? But sometimes flipping it back and saying, like, what is it costing me not to have this conversation? Like, if I leave it 6 months, that's another 6 months of a pay increase that we could be putting off, isn't it?
Yep. And £1,000 in your first job is £500,000 over the lifetime. That's a house. If you ask for £1,000, that's a house. That's just what
blows my mind, that. Yeah. And we've got another anonymous question that's come in, actually, Paul, because I know we're kind of covering bits of everything that's on the screen, but I appreciate everyone being on here live as well. I want to try and get through as many of these as we can. They've said, can you please ask Paul to comment on the old formula of your salary being 4 to 5 times a multiple of your revenue generation? Does this still apply? What parameters should we consider now in formulating an actual number based on earnings generated? If you've got any thoughts around that, Paul.
Yeah, so for small animal, absolutely it does. For farm animal, it isn't. It's less. Now you might think, oh, well, it's because farm animal don't do as much. It's because their overheads are much, much less as well. In farm animal, you have much less support staff. You are operating out the back of your car, whereas obviously in small animal, you have there is more for your salary to pay for in terms of location, surgery, fancy CT scanners, nurses, receptionists, etc. So it's probably 2.5 to 3 for farm, and it is 4 to 5 times for small animal. Now, those KPIs, those numbers are for running the business. They're not necessarily anything to do with what you should be paid. That's more just that's a good KPI if you're the manager or the CD or the regional director of a business to look at. But it's useful to go in there to have a look at. But remember that ability to earn is not necessarily all down to you, is it? It could be that you spend a lot of time in a small branch surgery where there has low footfall. It could be that you are a top surgeon punching out £6,000 and £7,000 operations all the time. So it could be that that you don't have the staff to be able to do whatever it is that you do because you're running around having to do a lot more because they've got very few nurses or very few receptionists there. So you're having to do a lot of other things very inefficiently. So a lot of the stuff you haven't got control of. So more importantly would be to have a look at what your number is and at least know what it is. It's even better if you can compare it to others, so you can get a little bit of a benchmarking on that within your practice. But I suppose it's not a bad starting point to say, if you are hitting 4 to 5 times turnover, if your salary 4 to 5 times is your turnover and you're hitting that, it's a very strong argument to make financially to the person on the other side of the table.
We've had a couple of questions and comments in the chat, Paul, about actually getting that information, which I know Adrian's just put here. It's essential to know your turnover for this. So what visibility of that do you actually have? And someone's direct messaged and said, what's the best way to find that out? Who do you ask? The practice manager? Is it practice management software?
Yeah. Again, it kind of depends on the culture of the organization you're in. Some cultures, some organizations I've been in are very, very open and everybody knows. Everyone knows what their turnover is. And some are very, very secretive of it and they don't share that information at all. It's on your practice management software and it depends if you have the ability to see it. If you don't have the ability to see it because of admin rights, etc., then you might have the practice manager, or you might have a finance person, an accounts person in the team that you can go and ask. It's not really confidential. I can't think of a sensible reason why a boss would not want you to have that information. Not a sensible reason, because there's nothing confidential about it. It's a number of what you bring in, what you turn over. Now, it could be that will raise a little alarm bell. It's like, I wonder why they're asking for this. Probably because they're going to come and see me for a salary negotiation. But that's not a bad thing, because, if I'm the boss and I know someone's coming in to talk to me about a salary negotiation, guess what that says to me? They're not about to hand their notice in, are they? Because they're about to come and talk to me about more money. Well, at least I've got a chance to keep them. So yeah. The worst thing on the planet is when someone hands the notice in and you do an exit interview and they say, I would have stayed for an extra £1,000, but I didn't think you'd pay it. And you go, I so would have given you £1,000 to stay. And that's the worst thing. So I can't, yes, ask. You can find it depending on your admin rights on the practice management system, or you go and ask the behind the scenes team, practice manager, admin, accounts people, etc., to find it.
Thank you, Paul. And that's all part of the research piece as well, isn't it, that you hammered home to us at the beginning. And we have had someone ask anonymously if the £15,000, I think you said, Paul, this was where you'd done the calculations again and again. They said, was that a study? They kind of feel like the boss would ask for that reference.
No, it's not. It's me sitting down with real numbers in my business because I wanted to know how much it would cost. And but though there are, I did Google it, and there are that's a fairly standard number, interestingly, that comes up. I don't know of any veterinary specific ones, but that's a fairly standard number that comes up in professions. So by all means, Google it. I do remember Googling it and finding out that it was sensible number. But the important thing, everyone thinks recruitment is about the £800 you have to pay to Vet Record to put the advert in, and it's not. That's a titchy amount. The massive amount is the fact that for 3 months after you've handed your notice in, you don't put that much effort in. The fact that there's a big gap for a couple of months because you never find someone within that 3 months at the moment. After someone's handed their notice in, finding someone within 3 months and getting them in doesn't happen. So there's a gap, there's a locum cost. There's also a cost of people getting fed up because I now have to go to the rest of the team and go, I know you're on a 1 in 5, you're on a 1 in 4 now, yay. There's an increased risk of them leaving. I've then got to spend my time interviewing people, writing job adverts, interviewing them, deciding they're no good, deciding they're good. I've then got to recruit them. I've then got to spend time out of my day, or someone else has to be allocated to onboard them, bring them in, train them up. They will make mistakes. They will put stuff wrong. They will do the quote wrong on the practice management system because they haven't got it before and they haven't done this before. And they'll crash the car on the way to the farm because they're stressed because they haven't been to that farm before, and they're trying to navigate and do everything at once. And so there's just so many more things that then happen for over the next few months before they're up and flying and part of the team. And so that is about 15 grand.
Wow. And Adrian's just added on to the end of there as well that a lot of recruiters are going to charge 20 to 25% of a first year salary as well on top of that, which these numbers add up, don't they, when you add everything you've just listed there and then that additional on top.
So don't feel embarrassed if you're going in for a small amount that you want. Just I know we're professionals, I know we're British, I know we're vets, I know we don't do money that well, but we shouldn't be embarrassed about this sort of stuff. You are offering, by staying, you are offering a much better outcome for the practice than them having to get someone else.
And just looking through the questions here, Paul, I think we've probably got time just to cover this last one, and then we should probably start wrapping up because I'm very conscious of everybody's time as well. I'm going to ask this one very generally, and I've said to the person that's asked this specifically as well, because there's quite a few specifics in here, to drop us an email. I've put the email address in the chat as well. But if you're in a practice where maybe whoever is in charge doesn't really like you talking salaries, and you end up talking salaries and realize that somebody else that's maybe less years experience, qualified, etc., is being paid significantly more, have you got any tips around breaching that as a subject, Paul?
Yes. So, yes, tricky one. This is why I think salaries need to be much more visible, just as well, because this situation then goes away. And I worry that one of the reasons that we have the gender pay gap is because of this negotiation style of it. If I found out that someone else was being paid a lot more than I was, I personally would be through the door of my boss very rapidly, and I would have no qualms with telling them that I know how much that other person's getting, and I'd ask, and I'd say, well, I feel, and I've done my research, I feel that I do the same job, a better job, my numbers are better, I'm more experienced, I've got a qualification, I do more difficult cases, I work harder, I do whatever reasons that you know why you should be paid more. Now, I'll just throw one little grenade in there. I don't think just because you're more years qualified that you should get more salary. And I know we kind of do, but what's the difference between a 9-year and a 12-year qualified vet? I don't, financially for the business, you are the same. So just because you're a few more years qualified, that's not that important. Yes, absolutely. The difference between a 1 and a 3-year qualified vet is enormous. We all know that. But after, later on, just because you're more years qualified doesn't mean. So you need to show why it is that you should be paid more. I bring in more money, I do more difficult cases, I have a better client bonding rate, whatever it is that you can get from the data to prove that you should be on the same or more than the other person. But there is nothing, if anyone tries to say it's illegal, you're not allowed, that's confidential, absolute load of rubbish. You are perfectly allowed to discuss and talk about salaries with no with no impact. The only time, there's no issue with talking about salaries at work at all.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was fantastic. The whole session, I feel like we've covered so much. We've managed to answer so many questions. I think we've probably come to the end of the time that we've got this evening for questions. But as ever, if there is anything financially related, whether that's support around pensions, investments, income protections, mortgages, just get in touch with us. hello@vetu.co.uk. Paul's just got on the screen at the moment some of our next steps too. So we have a link to a digital delegate bag, which you can type into your browser. You'll be able to access on there loads of resources. There's a short negotiation video that Paul actually did with the gentleman that he was talking about that signposted into that really cool study showing you what a difference it actually makes at that first negotiation at year one. There's loads of snippets. There's links that you can book in a call with one of the financial advisors that we spoke about at the beginning. It's full of information. And if there's anything that you can't find on there that you want related to finances and being in the veterinary profession, again, just email us hello@vetu.co.uk because we're here to help you with that. Register on our website and then you'll be in our ecosystem on our mailing list and we can make sure we keep you up to date. And then we should just on the screen, Paul, if you can flick onto our.
Yep. So I just had someone just say, could I answer number 6? What to say if boss rejects it straight away?
Go for it, Paul.
Straight back and say why. Why is it? What are the reasons that that you're saying no? And then the next question is, what can I do then? What would you like me to do? What would you see me doing? What do you think that I need to do in order to be worth the £3,000 that I've asked for? Throw it back at them and ask them. So why are you saying no? And what can I do to hit it? Would be straight back with as the next questions and see what they say.
Great shout heading back to that one. I think all the other ones we touched on and covered, didn't we, anyway?
Yeah, we did. I was just having a quick scroll through.
Good. And you've got some thanks coming in the chat as well for us jumping back onto that one because that's a great question. So just up on the screen at the moment, in fact, you know what, while I'm running through these calls to action, we are going to rerun our poll and see how everybody is feeling with regard to negotiation now, because we're all on 1s, 2s and 3s right at the beginning. So I'd love it for you to vote and let me know how confident you're feeling now. And in the meantime, just let us know in the chat box, what has been your take home from this session? What has been your number one top tip, your insight? What have you learned from this? What's been your feedback? We would absolutely love to know. If there's anything else we can help you with, again, there's our email address. Check out our full events menu. We have an event just for veterinary nurses coming up on the 10th and 17th of May to help open up conversations around finances for veterinary nurses as a result of conversations we had with lots of vet nurses at London Vet Show, our mastermind. Follow us on social media. We have loads of information, insights, education, snippets just to help you, empower you to an independent you. And make sure that you spread the word. We really want to help others in the profession with this too. We'd love to see you on our next events that are aimed at everyone. We've got pensions at the end of May, and then we've got taxes for locums and IR35 at the end of June as well. And I can see on here, we have got most people are now at 5, 6 and 7, and we even have a 10. We have moved up. We had nobody above a 5 at the beginning. So Paul, just a huge thank you to you for your time preparing this, coming along and sharing so many gems as well, because I am massively impressed that we've gone from, we have no 1s, no 2s, a couple of 3s, which is fine, couple of 4s again, which is fine. We've still moved up and mostly 7s now. So that is huge. Thanks, everybody. Paul, back to you.
Grant, I think that's it really. I haven't got anything else really to say, but thank you very much. Drop us an email if you want to chat more. By all means, get in touch at hello@vetu.co.uk. Very happy if you've got some very specific questions that you didn't feel comfortable talking about. Obviously, here, drop us an email and we can talk offline. But yeah, get registered, follow us. There's loads of blogs, there's loads of stuff, look forward to seeing you on the next events.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you there and be in touch in between if there's anything we can help with. Right.